Welcome back to the Beaver Banter podcast. I'm CJ Baumgartner, my co-host Ian Rivers. Ian, things have kind of started to slow down for us here a little bit. It's crazy. I know we talked about the last few weeks of we got football and women's soccer and men's and women's basketball are getting going. And then we have men's and women's hockey. And we had some really loaded shows. It was really, really fun. Things have kind of slowed down a little bit here. There's no football. There's no women's soccer to really touch on. I think we finally can firmly cement ourselves in women's sports or in winter sports for the men and women.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the slowest weekends we've had probably since the beginning of October, maybe because of, I mean, men's hockey was off this weekend. Of course, both basketball teams played and women's hockey played, and that was it in terms of, your major team sports, at least on campus. So, yeah, one of the slower weeks we've had. But, it was good. It was good to be able to focus more on certain sports that we haven't been able to touch on as much as we would like. And of course, as you said, we'll start making that transition now as the snow starts falling and as the cold starts
like
setting
45
in.
degrees outside
right
now.
Yeah, it's unseasonably warm. It's
so maybe we still should keep talking football, ? Women's soccer? Just keep going. I mean, clearly the conditions are still right. So yeah, that's where we're kind of sitting right now. Why don't we start, Ian, by talking about a little basketball here. The Bemidji State University men's basketball team. We talked about coming into the season, had a great year, still a lot of guys coming back, had a lot of good potential here. And we kind of were just cautiously optimistic on where this thing kind of could go. And they had a nice little 3-1, 4-1 start through non-conference play. It's like, all right, let's see what happens once we get into the actual meat and potatoes of the NSIC schedule. We'll find out if this team is for real or not. And they had 2 winnable games in front of them against Minot State and Crookston, and they ended up winning both. And right now they're 2-0 to start conference play. We said a sweep was definitely in play for this team, Ian, and they were able to go out and get both wins.
Yeah, really good start to conference play against Minot State and Minnesota Crookston. And I believe because of his stellar weekend, John Sutherland was named NSIC Men's Basketball Hooper of the Week.
As he should be.
Yeah, so a great weekend for him. 2 double-doubles. The first game against Minot State, the 11-point victory. Sutherland goes for, let me just verify. Yep, this is the correct game. Sutherland goes for 17 and 13. Dalton Albrecht also had a double-double with 15 and 14. And Braden Williams put up a game-high 21 points to lead the Beavers in scoring 88 points. That's a pretty good offensive output. And you look at some of the shooting percentages, which is a big thing that we looked at last year. And the three-point shooting was way up, almost 43% in that game. That's a very good clip. 47%, maybe not what you'd want to see in terms of field goal percentage, but the Beavers really shot poorly in the first half. I made a note mentally. That game started off, I believe it was a 10-0 run from Minot State to open the game, and the Beavers were just
could have got ugly real quick.
Yeah, they shot 12 in the first half, 12 of 33, so 36%, and then 15 of 24 in the second half. That is 62%. So much better in the second half of that game. Actually, both percentages, the three-point percentage, 6 of 9 in the second half. That's going to be a big thing. And then 67% from the free throw stripe. You want to see a little bit of improvement there. You'd like to be over 70%, maybe near 75, 80% as a team, but not a terrible thing. I mean, you could shoot certainly worse than that from the free throw stripe. And then rebounds, I guess, the only other thing that I was going to look at, because normally, like we talked about last year, the team that wins the rebounding battle wins the game, and the Beavers controlled that by 10. I'm sorry, the Bemidji State Beavers, 40-30.
And it helps when you have Sutherland down there.
Sutherland and Albrecht. I think that's going to be a huge thing in NSIC play. Both of those guys just gobbling up rebounds, and I mean, I think that's going to be absolutely a huge factor that can lead the Beavers towards another NSIC tournament berth, and hopefully maybe a little bit better seeding than they had last year. And we'll figure out exactly how this tournament's going to work now that there's no divisions. But CJ, Saturday's game though against Minnesota Crookston, pretty exciting finish to that one. You want to talk to us about that a little bit?
Yeah, and this is part of why Sutherland got his player of the week. So Bemidji State, again, Crookston has played Bemidji State tough. They've gotten some wins out of this rivalry in the last few years, but it felt like this is a game Bemidji State should come out and win. It was close through a lot of the first half. I know that Bemidji State was able to kind of eventually control things a bit against Minot, but Crookston hung around, took some leads towards the end of games. It was back and forth. And a couple things stood out to me. One is you talk about the 3-pointers, and I haven't looked at the official percentage number, but they just were able to drill some clutch buckets towards the end of that game. Whenever it felt like they needed to get a 3, they were able to get one. And this is where I think Bemidji State, over the last couple of years, when they started to shoot better from beyond the arc, has really what's kind of helped take this program, because Bemidji State has, over the last few years, and maybe I'm off base on this, but to me has always felt like they've had some good guys down in the low block doing some stuff down there, and they just haven't been able to kind of get that consistent outside shooting. But right now, Bemidji State, they got multiple guys that can shoot from beyond the arc, and they got multiple guys that can make it consistently. And with all and down low with Sutherland, and we talked about Albrecht and stuff like that. I mean, they have some guys that can play down low. They have some 3-point shooting, and that just makes their offense, it makes Sutherland much more tough to stop, because you can't just clog the lane, because you can drill those outside shots. And Bemidji State was able to keep it close, but with 0.2 seconds left, Sutherland was able to get the ball into the hoop. And I mean, it's a good thing. I mean, they were able to get that thing in there and win the game. It's a last second shot. Just one of those things where you're teetering on the brink of like, yeah, split's fine, but like, oh man, it was really there for us. And to get it over Crookston, just a big win. And he was able to make that play, and it's what you expect a guy like him to do in that situation. He comes through, and I know we sang Sutherland's praises a lot a year ago, and we're going to be doing a lot of the same this year, because it's been a big turnaround for Bemidji State, just taking it from that kind of middle tier of conferences in the conference of like, yeah, a team that can flirt with like a back end of the playoff berth every once in a while, to a team that now at least can beat anybody in the conference. I feel like that's something that we can say with confidence now. Before it was like, well, yeah, like they can hang around and maybe they'll win, but like they, and over the last few years, they've kind of taken that next step there. But I mean, yeah, it was a close finish toward the end, and now they're 2-0 in conference play. And I guess, I know we shared the video up on the page on the Beaver Banter Twitter page. Were you able to kind of see that last second play, Ian, or were you able to see anything from that game to kind of get any thoughts on?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I saw the play that broke down, good pass by I believe it was BJ Davis, maybe, dumping the ball inside.
Yeah. Davis got it down to him.
Yep, to Sutherland. Sutherland led the way with 26 points and 11 rebounds. Dalton Albrecht 1 rebound shy of a double-double with 10 and 9. 3-point shooting was okay. It was 28% from the game, 36% in the second half, which is a pretty good clip. But shooting as a whole, 39% on the day for Bemidji State. And like we said, look at the rebound battle. They were exactly tied at 37 rebounds. That's going to be a big reason why this game is 62-63, coming down to the final 2 seconds, or 0.2 seconds of the game. So, yeah, it's good that Bemidji State was able to pull this out. We don't know much about Minnesota Crookston and what they'll be this season. In terms of sports that Crookston is towards the bottom of the conference at, basketball, obviously last year they were pretty bad. I believe they won like 2 games all of last season, but even though they're towards the bottom of the conference, it doesn't look quite as bad in basketball as it does in some of the other sports for Crookston. Namely like football when they had it, and women's soccer this year, that sort of thing.
Yeah, Crookston's baseball is definitely what they've been known for the last couple of years. Yeah.
Right. But so we'll see. Right now they're sitting bottom of the conference at 0-3. Bemidji State tied for the conference lead at 2-0, but we're still early in the game. We got a couple of big games coming up this weekend. Hopefully they can keep rolling, keep the momentum rolling. But
one more thing, I want to go back to that play, because I just looked at it again, and there's one little subtle note on this last play, because we talk about on this play with Davis trying to drive down in. but Sutherland gets kind of a sneaky, I don't know if this was by design or if this just kind of was guys on the court seeing something, and the name escapes me, but number 4, I don't know why I can't, I'm blanking on
Braden Williams.
Braden Williams, there you go. At the right elbow, and maybe just off to the side, maybe on the right wing, just kind of sets like this little screen, or at the very least just stands in the way of Sutherland's defender, because they're all watching him set the screen for Davis, and for him to just kind of get that little action to kind of just get some separation, he almost rolls away. And I don't know if that's, again, I don't know if that's an intentional screen or if by design from Braden Williams. I don't know if that's just looking at it again. I don't know if it's just Sutherland reading the court and just kind of seeing like, hey, I think I can kind of slip away, because he sees the whole, everybody looks like everybody's eyes are on the point guard in that play. And he just takes a couple steps, slides down, doesn't get into the lane, doesn't get in the way of his teammate, but slides down into that low block, knowing that he'll be there as kind of that dump off option. And of course, everybody wants to stop the ball. And so that sucks everybody in the lane. There's 3 gray jerseys for Crookston finding the guy with the ball, and Sutherland's able to slip down. So it's just those IQ basketball plays that they were able to make that just, I mean, it's what's helped them over the last, that second half of the season, basically since the calendar year of 2023. Bemidji State men's basketball has really, really turned a corner and been playing some nice ball.
Yeah, it looks almost like there was those little pick plays that they run in football that aren't technically a screen, but
a guy's just kind of standing in the way. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Sutherland's defender looked like he kind of just lost focus on the fact that, I mean, there's 3 seconds left. You got to stop ball scores. And so he just kind of, my guy doesn't have the ball. This guy's, they're trying to set a screen for Davis. I've got to help hedge this screen, and lost control of Sutherland, who was able to slip to the basket for a really good play. And credit to Davis to finding him in the lane there. It's always tough to pass up those opportunities when you got the ball in your hands late in the game like that. You want to be the hero for yourself, but a great pass and a great bucket. And the Beavers are 6-2 on the season. Pretty good start.
I mean, it's been a great start for them. And I haven't gone back. I don't want to speak out of turn here, but this has been the best start that they've had, certainly in my memory, especially considering it includes a sweep in the conference to begin NSIC play. It's the best start that they've had in a while, unless I'm missing a year. I think it's been one of their best. And the other thing, and I know that they have a tough opponent coming up, we'll get to that in a second. One other thing I do want to highlight is I mentioned this a year ago when Bemidji State got a commitment from him. Their sophomore guard, number 2, Tate Olson. I actually covered him in high school. So he was a senior my first year doing radio back towards my hometown. He played for New York Mills. They had a team that went to the section title game in 6A that year. They lost to Belgrade Brutenell Rosa in that one.
Jaguars.
It's always the Jaguars.
I'm familiar,
They
were in our conference. I went to Maple Lake High School, and for a while they were in our conference. I'm not sure if they still are, but we played them quite a few times, and it did not go well most of the time. They had a pretty good basketball program in the early 2010s.
Consistently, for like that last 10 years in recent memory. I mean, I'm sure they've had it for longer, but at least to my memory, it's been that way. So anyway, Tate Olson is a guy who's starting to get some minutes as a sophomore. And again, he kind of fits the profile of what Bemidji State wants to do. He's a 6'5", 190. Like, on offense isn't getting a ton of looks, but I think has just kind of been useful with the size and the lankiness to be able to kind of help out defensively. Not getting a ton of minutes, but just another kind of a younger Beaver to watch out for and just kind of keep an eye on, mainly just because I've seen him in high school. So I just know a little bit more about some of that kind of stuff. But I mean, I think Bemidji State right now, they got a good combination because they got guys like Sutherland who are towards that upper class level. And then you have some of these other guys. You have the guys like an Olsen, you have a Tennyson who's a little younger. You have some of these guys who have kind of are like, this isn't like with the Timberwolves, you look at them and you say, oh my gosh, like the way that their roster is constructed, this is pretty much like 1 year of like, let's just see what happens. And next year we're going to have to make some decisions. With this Bemidji State Beavers team, there's obviously some players are going to go, but they have a chance to kind of build something here and have a little window with this kind of current core that they have. It's really fun to see for the men's basketball team right now.
Yeah, and you mentioned the good start that they had. Last season, they started off the season 5-1, but then dropped 4 straight games once they won over
Right.
Crookston by 5, and then they dropped 4 straight games to start conference play 1-4. So hopefully that doesn't end up happening again this season. But we'll see. My other question for Mr. John Sutherland: why is he listed as a junior on the BSU Beavers webpage? Do we know
Interesting.
anything about that? Because you click on full bio, and last year he was listed as a junior as well, which I noticed when I was looking over the roster this last weekend. So either somebody's got something wrong there on the website, and
I was
he's
going to
no
say
longer a
somebody
junior.
might have
I mean,
forgotten to
because
click a box.
yeah, I mean he played the entire year last year. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
sans a few games, but that's one little question that I had for whoever's running this website. But yeah, a couple games coming up that will be eh, pretty tough compared to what we just saw. MSU Moorhead, depending on what poll you're looking at, I think they're a top 5 team in the country for Division II right now. That'll be the next opponent, and of course, MSU Moorhead, when you met them early in last season, they kind of controlled that game, winning by 26 points in the first matchup. And then, of course, Beavers, I believe, won the second matchup. If I scroll down here, pretty late in the season, that was a good win for the Beavers, 88-87, really getting us hyped up, kind of submitting or solidifying our playoff spot. And then, of course, this season ends at the hands of the Dragons in the heartbreaking fashion. But yeah, um, I believe they're road games this weekend. Let
Yep,
me
they are on the road.
double
So
check.
not only are you playing a
Yep.
team in MSU Moorhead that's ranked number 5 or number 7 respectively in the country, you got to do it in Moorhead. And I don't know, you ever seen that arena where they play basketball at
Yes, I've
Moorhead?
been in it.
Yeah, it's like a multi thing facility. So the
Mm-hmm.
basketball court just kind of feels thrown in the middle. It's the court's very nice. There's a good there's a decent little atmosphere and it gets going, but it's just a weird vibe because you're in this big building that they kind of throw a basketball court, like not in the middle of, but like kind of on the side of in the
Yeah, it's the
building.
same place. It's NSIC Hall. It's the same place they play volleyball as well.
Yeah.
And the court just feels like maybe it's every stadium and every court is going to be a little different, but BSU's is you're right on top of the action. It feels like, and you
Hmm.
feel a little bit further away in NSIC Hall there.
Yeah, that's probably the best way to put it. And so, I mean, they got a great setup there. They've just played good basketball there for a very, very long time. They've always been a traditionally good basketball school in recent memory. And there's, I don't know if it matters. Maybe it doesn't. To a fan, you want to avenge that loss. Sometimes you talk to players and it's like they're very hot or cold. Like we talk about this with some football guys that we interviewed this year. Like, do you ever want revenge for this game? Do you ever want this or that? Like, nah, we got a game in front of us. We want to go win. We want to go beat them. They're good. We want to prove we're good, but there's no like whatever. I wonder though if the way that Bemidji State lost this game a year back in the spring or the late winter in that NSIC tournament to lose it at the buzzer, it felt like the Bemidji State felt like they had a team of destiny in the NSIC tournament, have that kind of get ripped away by a team Moorhead that, correct me if I'm wrong, they ended up winning the tournament or they finished second.
I want to say that they won it. I cannot remember for the life of me
Would
who won it between them and Duluth last year.
I'll look it up here.
But yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, whether or not it's the way that game in particular ended, and I think you add the stakes in there as well. Bemidji State was like right on the outside bubble of the tournament, like the national tournament, which was crazy to me going into last season. I believe our record was 20-11 last year.
Mm-hmm.
20 wins is going to get you damn close to that tournament. And so just, with the stakes at hand, you're in an NSIC tournament semifinal game. You're right on the edge of you're a bubble team for the tournament. Everything at hand. And a lot of these guys are returning, of course, Momo Kone and I can't remember the other senior's name that we had last year, but there was players that left, but there's still a lot of guys on this team that played big roles on that team, and they're back for more. And hopefully, at the very least, you go and put up a solid showing and say, yeah, this is the best team in the conference right now, but we're here to stay. Like we've got some staying power at the top of this conference. That's kind of what I'm looking for in this weekend's matchup, at least with MSU Moorhead. And then if you can't take that one, go to Aberdeen the next day and take one off Northern State. They're 3-5 so far on the season, 1-1 in NSIC play. So that one should be a little bit easier. But both games are on the road, and if you can go 1-1 on the road after a sweep at home, come back the next weekend. You got a home and away series with UMary St. Cloud. So we got to take it one weekend at a time, and there's still a lot of basketball to be played. We're just getting into the meat, like you said, the meat and potatoes of this schedule.
Well, and what's interesting about the schedule is the fact that it's like they have the games this weekend, they have the games next weekend, and then they're just off for the next 3 weeks until things pick up January 5th and 6th. So it's kind of like high school basketball in a sense where, like it's December, we want to get into our stuff. We obviously want to win basketball games, but January is really the month where, we should really start evaluating this team. And that's kind of what it feels like. This team has a chance to do some really good stuff, but whatever things that they do, it's likely going to look different once we get to January. I'm sure Coach Boshi has all of his stuff and is like, trying some different guys out there, rolling with some different guys, seeing where he can go with certain matchups and things and rotations and spacing, whatever, and then kind of roll with it once you get into the new year. But I mean, each conference game is important and every game still matters at the end of the season. And it'll be a good test, I think, early in the year, because at least for our purposes, if they lose this game, let's say Bemidji State loses this game later in the season, we'll go, the season's progressed. We're better than we were at that point. Too early in the season to tell. And if they win, we'll just say, well, they won, obviously. So it fits my narrative. Therefore, I like it.
I've always hated the mentality of like sports fans. It's like, oh, dude, it's early. Like this game. I mean, yeah, we can lose this game. It's like, yeah, well, you can. You're right to a certain extent. But like, I think of it more in like an NFL, mindset where it's like, oh, yeah, this game in week 3 is not super important to our season. Yeah, but it's a divisional game. And it might not be important to us right now looking forward. Then it comes to week 18 and it's like, oh, well, that would have been a really important game that we choked away or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But, obviously every game is important and you want to pick up the wins where you can. That way, if you have a little bit of a struggle like you did last year where you drop a couple in a row, you've got a little bit of a breather,
you got some cushion,
breathing space and some cushion. But I mean, what else is there to say? Very excited about the start to the season so far for the Beavers men's basketball team. They've done very well. And I think that you've got enough evidence to say it wasn't just a 1 year kind of out of nowhere thing last year. They've got at least enough of the players back and Boshi's doing well enough with what he's got to make this a sustainable thing, at least for the rest of this season. And hopefully, with that consistency comes more of it down the road.
Right, exactly. Moving things along to the women's basketball side of things. We talked about a split is potentially in play for the women's basketball team. They did not get that opportunity on Friday. They ended up falling to Minot State in that one. They did have a chance for the split, though, Ian, and we'll get to both these. We'll break down each game individually, but they had a chance to get the split on Saturday. It was a back and forth game between Crookston. Bemidji State had a tough first half. They had just an insanely great third quarter. They were able to come back and not only tie the game, but they were able to take the lead. It felt like everything was coming together. They had their chance. And then at the final second, we talk about the great play that the men's team did against Crookston in the final seconds. Well, Minnesota Crookston did about the same equivalent as underneath the basket. They were just able to get a last second play and end up putting the ball in the basket. I'm trying to see the name of who put it in for Crookston. It doesn't say, I believe, the person. Here we go. Olivia Walsh of Crookston buried a layup while getting fouled, pushed the Golden Eagles in front with 0.2 seconds to play, made the free throw 73-70. Upon first watch, Ian, it looked like somebody from Bemidji was trying to save the ball from going out of bounds underneath the Crookston basket, which just as a guy who isn't good at basketball, but just knows like a few golden rules I was told in high school, like can't save it underneath the rim and then underneath the opponent's rim. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh wait, I don't think she came up with it. Like upon further review of like watching that play back and forth, it looked like Crookston just got to the ball first underneath the hoop. And when everybody's chasing for the basketball, there's Walsh who's just sitting under the rim, just kind of like, I'll be here when you get it, and was able to get the feed. And kind of the same thing with Sutherland of like, I'm seeing what's happening. I'm going to read this play. I'm not going to get the basketball, but you know what? I'm going to be right here in case somebody else does. And they were able to get the win. It's tough because, I mean, Bemidji State did play well. The women's basketball team played well in that second half. They went in losing 41-29, and to be able to come back in this game and have it end up finishing the way it does at 73-70, the offense got going a little bit, and they were able to do some things. And it's one of those we talk about with the men's team going, felt, understandable, good game, but man, that one would have been nice to kind of get under your belt or kind of add to your collection. But yeah, they ended up falling on that one. It's a good effort, good second half, really, really great third quarter. Ian, I think if you look on the BSU Beavers website, it talks about their third quarter where they outscored Crookston 23-10. And they just got slightly outscored in the fourth quarter, 22-18. But really, it's kind of a tale of, it's weird how women's basketball can be broken down into quarters, like because men's are in halves. And I'm sure men's would be the same way if they were broken into quarters. But sometimes it just kind of you look at it. Bemidji State was down 18 or was up 18-14 after the first quarter. Second quarter, Crookston goes on a 27-11 run. Third quarter, Bemidji State goes on a 23-10 run. And then in the fourth quarter, Crookston was up 22-18 in the quarter to win 73-70. But I'm just kind of putting my thoughts out there on that Crookston game. Ian, what did you kind of have a chance to watch for the weekend? What are your thoughts?
Well, I didn't get a great chance to watch any of the games outside of most of the men's game on Friday afternoon or evening. But yeah, I mean, if you pull up box scores and you just go off box score, and obviously this does not tell the whole story of the game, but you look at the 3 losses Bemidji State has suffered this year, there's always one quarter where the Beavers just are flat. Mayville State, it was the second quarter, 22-8, they're outscored. Against Minot State, the first quarter coming right out the gate, 29-13. And then, yeah, you play well in the rest of the game, but like you said, against Crookston, 27-11. That's a 16-point deficit in one quarter of play. That's really tough to overcome, even though they did have a 23-10 quarter in the third. And like you said, I mean, they played pretty well in the second half, all things considered. But that one quarter, if you can just cut those deficits in half in all of those games, you're in a much better position to win that basketball game. And obviously, there's more that goes into it. And the rebounding, honestly, this weekend was pretty tight. It wasn't necessarily a rebounding issue. Shooting wasn't terrible. I think the main difference, you're looking across the box scores, it's pretty dead even between every statistical category between Minnesota Crookston and Bemidji State. And that, checks out if you look at a final score that's 3 points. But it makes it difficult to find one thing necessarily that Bemidji State did better or worse. Right. I mean, 13-14 in turnovers. Rebounds were tied. It was just, I guess,
whichever team kind of got the lucky break. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a game of inches sometimes. And, Crookston had a couple more inches in the game. I don't know. I mean, it's one of those games. It's a tough task. This team was already kind of slated to be towards the bottom, and it's unfortunate because this is one of those games that you were in, and you want to be able to capitalize on all of those opportunities when you get them, or as many of them as you possibly can. You're going to lose some close games, I'm sure, but it stinks because you had this one, it seemed like, and then comes down to the last couple seconds of the game and just slipped away.
Yeah, exactly. And that's because, again, it's just one of those, like you said, where they had it, like, it's not a big deal. It's just one of those where it's like, you get it. You're kind of in one of those tie games towards the end. Obviously, you're kind of at the mercy of just something happening. Like, somebody's got to make a play, and Crookston was able to make a play at the end to win. Now Bemidji State goes on the road for the next 2 games. Obviously, like the men, they're going to be playing at MSU Moorhead and at Northern State. And, looking at this kind of weekend ahead, and again, I just think with this team, I think that they got to just try and see where they can go from here. A couple games on the road might, having their thing going, but I'm trying to see a stat here that I thought I found, but I can't find it. So, I mean, where do they go from here?
Well, hopefully they get into the win column here against an MSU Moorhead team that has not picked up a single win this season on the women's side of the basketball. They're 0-7, 0-2 in NSIC conference play, so it's kind of a flip-flop of the men. Northern State 6-2 and 2-0 in conference play for the women's basketball program, and Moorhead at 0-7. So hopefully the Beavers can get off to a strong start. Again, look for more consistency from this team. If they can cut down on one of those big quarters where they really get blown out in that specific quarter, then I think that we can look for a more complete game from this team. And obviously that's easy enough to say, and there's a lot more that goes into that one specific quarter than just saying make more shots and play better defense.
I simply would just call the plays that make all the shots.
Yeah.
Duh.
Why don't you just make the basket every time?
Simply would. I just can't understand how basketball players can just miss shots. You'd think that there'd be somebody who could just make them all and they'd find them. That's a deep reference there.
Deep cut.
I can't understand how NFL kickers just miss kicks. I mean,
you know what, dude? Honestly, like, credit to him.
You're referencing the ninja tweet, right?
The ninja tweet. Like, dude, honestly, like, when I first read that tweet, I was kind of like, you know what, dude? He's not that wrong. And I'm like, I get it. There's way more that goes into it. It's not that easy to make a kick. And I'm not saying that I can go out there and do it, but it's like some of these guys, like, this is the highest level and you're kicking it like 60%. What the heck are we doing here?
Right. Indoors.
I don't know. You're kicking at Ford Field and you're going 6 for 10, man. What the heck?
So anyway, I would just simply only shoot the shots that are going to go in the basket. I would only pass to the people that are open.
If you get the ball and you have an open look, hit the shot. If you don't have the open look, pass it. It's easy. It's basketball.
Come on. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I certainly could do it given the opportunity. I'd be right there. For those of you who aren't watching the stream, I'm shaking my head. It is one of those situations. So they have a chance here against Moorhead to kind of get back into that win column and get their first conference win of the year, which again, just getting that first one and, especially with the way the team finished last year, to get that first conference win and to kind of try and stack them on top of each other is really important. So that's going to be a big weekend for that team that we'll be watching out for. Ian, women's hockey, what's going on with them this weekend?
They got swept by the number 3 team in the country, University of Minnesota.
It really do be like that sometimes.
Yeah, I mean it's tough, man. They're a really good program, and we are not quite on that level as of right now. 2-9 on Friday and 1-9 on Saturday. Those games are on the road. They're at Ritter Arena, and honestly, the score lines aren't necessarily as lopsided as they were last season. It's still not ideal, but focusing on this next weekend, you probably don't stay in the cities, but you're going back to the cities. Mendota Heights, St. Paul, whatever you want to call it. They have a series against St. Thomas, the other team that's kind of hovering around the bottom of the WCHA right now, along with Bemidji and Mankato. So a good opportunity to pick up some points on the road, I think. St. Thomas currently sitting at 6-13 overall. I don't know who they played outside the conference because they are 0-12 in the conference, including what must have been a sweep to Minnesota State, who currently sits at 9 points. But they went 6-1 outside the conference, and they are 0-12 inside the conference. So we got to find out who St. Thomas played and play them more often, I think, for our out-of-conference games. But, yeah, winnable games, I think. And if you want to try to stay competitive and stay maybe in a tight race with Minnesota State for that 5th seed, which I think should be like maybe a little goal. I mean, honestly, I think we finished 8th last season in the WCHA, if I'm not wrong.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Try to finish 7th at the very least, and this is a great opportunity to put some distance between yourself and St. Thomas. And at the very least, pick up a split on the road with a team that's struggling just like you are, and try to pick up your 2nd win of the season.
Yeah, the fun aspect of this team though is at least down at Ritter Arena, at least the War Road line was doing some stuff. Kind of the nickname that they give to all the girls from War Road that are on the team. I'm making sure I got all of them here on the roster or on the roster pulled up here. But that's been kind of the conversation. If you follow somebody like Jared Roboto on Twitter who covers covers both hockey teams, he talks a lot about that War Road line, one that features. Hold on here, want to get the names right. On the War Road line, when you have someone like Genevieve Hendrickson, Tyler Hendrickson, and Kate Johnson, some of they're the ones from War Road that are on the roster here. But with that line, it's just kind of been, it's at least a fun little storyline to get to watch through the season and kind of get to see them get to play together. It's been, and they were able to get, I believe, both of the goals, but at the very least, one of the goals that we got, one of the two goals that Bemidji State got over the weekend.
Yeah, well, they scored two on Saturday, or two on Friday, and one on Saturday. But yes, that line was cooking this weekend, to say the least. So yeah, one series this weekend, and then the team's off until basically like the weekend right before New Year's. It's going to be a spotty December in terms of sports for Bemidji State. I think we talked about it last week with the men's hockey team having, like only 4 or 5 series, 10 games, I think, between whatever we were talking about last week and like February 2nd, which is insane that there's that little hockey to be played. But Christmas break will do that to you. Once we kick it into January, I think things will get more consistent again. But, a big 2-week gap for the hockey team, for the women after this weekend in St. Thomas.
I mean, it's almost it's a 20-day gap from their next game for when they go to Pittsburgh for a little battle at the Berg to play Robert Morris and then either Colgate or Maine. And then they take another couple weeks off. Yeah, it's got to be kind of a weird schedule for them. And then it's just game after game after game after game until the end of February. But yeah, I mean, I know college hockey can be a long season, especially if you're a team in Bemidji State's spot on the women's side. But yeah, I mean, that's got to just kind of be all right, let's get through the St. Thomas series. Let's kind of figure some things out and let's try and, carry that over into the Pittsburgh games. But it's really hard to evaluate kind of those ones when they're non-conference, and just an opportunity to maybe get a change of scenery and play some different teams and then see if you can cobble something together and build some momentum into January and February. But we'll see. Ian, let's talk a little bit of men's hockey. They were off last week. And now they have a chance to come back again, kind of a spotty December. That first weekend, they weren't there and they weren't able to play, but now they're coming out and they're back on the ice this weekend. And this time they got their first rematch of the season as they're going to play the Lakers at the Sanford Center this Friday and Saturday.
Yeah, it's crazy already playing your second series against Lake Superior State when there's still quite a few teams in the conference you have not seen yet. But either way, it's a chance for revenge, and hopefully they're able to take it. I think Lake Superior State was also off this last weekend, or no, they were not. They got no, I think I'm trying to figure out if they won or lost this game in a shootout. So they did not get swept, but they tied and they lost to the University of Minnesota State Mankato. And I cannot remember if they took the shootout point or not. But yeah, either way, it's the good news for the Beavers is right now the conference is absolutely wide open. I mean, if you follow the conference, it's Splitsville every weekend for almost every team. Most teams either have 10 or 8 games played in the conference right now. Lake Superior State and St. Thomas have 10. Everybody else has 8. And the conference standings are separated by 10 points between first and 8th place. That's 3.5 games. That's nuts, at least in my opinion, because last year it was probably like a 25-point differential just because I think Lake State had a pretty poor start to their season, didn't get hot until kind of after the new year. And I think Michigan Tech was out to a pretty good start, or Bemidji State actually going into the new year was the front runner technically. But it's a big opportunity. Lake State, I mean, as much as the Beavers have been struggling, so is everybody else in the conference. Lake State, especially with 10 games played, they have 12 points. That's just over a point per game. So if you're at home, this is a great opportunity to say, yeah, I mean, we've got to take points from this. We've got 2 home series in a row against teams at the bottom echelon of the standings. And maybe that doesn't mean much because the league is so close. So playing the 3rd place team isn't much difference between playing the 7th place team. But either way, these are home series against teams that are technically at the bottom of the standings. And if you do want to be that team that kind of breaks away or repositions yourself up towards the top of the standings, these are going to be weekends that you kind of have to do it that way. Coming out of Christmas break when we've got road trips at Ferris and then road trip into Houghton, you don't necessarily feel the pressure and feel the need to get all 6 points or 5 points from those series. You can say, yeah, we came out of that with a split. That's what everybody else has been doing. We're completely fine. I think you need to take care of your business at home, try to get 2 to 3 to 4 points on the road, and you can really start to pull away and reposition yourself at the top half of this conference. And we are so far, give it a couple weeks and we'll be past the Christmas break and past the new year. And that's when things start to get a little dicey for this team in the past. So I'm very interested to see what's going to happen this year because man, I can't imagine it gets any worse than what we've started with a 5-9 record, but it's mostly conference action from here on out. And if the Beavers can put anything together, I'd be very happy with that. Something that might make that difficult is a big positive for the university, but it's a big negative for the games that will happen on the ice potentially during this time period. Casper Magnuson and Eric Polkamp have both been named to preliminary rosters for their respective World Juniors teams. So Eric Polkamp with Team USA has been named to the preliminary roster, and Casper Magnuson to the Norwegian roster. So that's huge. I mean,
it's awesome.
2 players from Bemidji State on World Junior rosters. That is almost unheard of. I mean, we might get one, a couple of years back. I think White Cloud was pretty close to getting onto the Canadian roster at one point. He might have made the preliminary roster as well. So we'll see. I'm not sure about Polkamp. I'm not 100% sure. I'm pretty sure Magnuson will probably make it.
That's what kind of the chatter on Twitter sounded like.
Yeah. Magnuson will probably end up making it. And that's a pretty big blow because – Jackson Judding right now, he got injured in the last weekend series that we played against North Dakota. And we don't know anything, concrete about it. But the nature of some of these hockey injuries and how that plays out, I mean, I wouldn't expect him to be back anytime soon. I don't know if it's a season-ending thing, but it always seems to happen. And it's just like, yeah, he'll be out for a couple months. So I don't know. I'm not an inside source. I have no idea, but that's a big loss for this Beavers team because Judding was playing really, really well of late. And so hopefully the team can have somebody step up, and to be without Magnuson now, especially if that happens, obviously it's a very good thing. You want to be able to have your players go and do that. And it's big for the brand of Bemidji State, and it's good for those players to go get that experience. And I'm sure they'll both be better when they come back, but that's one of your top defensemen, at least offensively. I know Eric struggled a little bit. He's a freshman. He's just coming in, and he's had his struggles defensively. The whole team has. I don't know if you guys have noticed that we've given up like an average of 5 goals a game over the last 2 months. But yeah, and we'll see. Maybe Matthias Scholl comes back and helps the defense with Polkamp gone. We'll see. That's still kind of up in the air. There's no concrete evidence as to when he'll be back, but I've kind of got some blind optimism even after, the North Dakota series didn't really go the way you wanted it to, just because of the positive talks about guys like Casper and Eric being on the World Junior preliminary rosters. And, it's mostly conference play from here on out outside of a weekend against Augustana and St. Cloud State. So, I mean, I've got some blind optimism, and maybe that'll be my downfall as we head towards January and February, but I'm pretty excited for the rest of the season. We'll see what can happen. Every weekend seems like it's going to be a big one. Every point seems like it's going to matter coming down towards the end of the season. I think right now, the Beavers should kind of have their hopes set on just getting home ice, right? That should be what you want to do bare minimum. You want to try to improve off of last year where you finished 6th and had a bunch of tiebreakers go against you in that last weekend. Improve off of that, hopefully get a home playoff series, and then, if you make it past the semifinals, like we talked about, it's one game. Anything can happen in one game. But yeah, I mean, and we'll reassess that as we get closer to the end of the year. It's just December, so we don't want to set any too lofty of expectations right now. I think that would be what I'm gunning on, is to stay right here in 4th place where we're at.
Yeah. And, we talk about the schedule kind of lining up for the hockey team. They're home outside of New Year's Eve. They're home the entire month with the Lake Superior State series, the Bowling Green series, and then kind of getting a weekend break before going to play St. Cloud at home and then going down to St. Cloud to play them there. And then, you're on the road all January, which is the trade-off of that. So like you said, if they can build up some points right now, while they have the home ice, while they have kind of a stretch of just being at home, that January, even though it's only 2 series, it's going to be a brutal kind of January when it comes, especially if they're not healthy.
Yeah, if they're not healthy, and then you add in the missing pieces. Any points you get with those guys still on this roster is just like you said. You don't have to necessarily feel like, man, we're down players for the World Juniors. We're not necessarily as healthy as we want to be. You can take that month of January and February, because I think somebody said it might be 6 games potentially that they would miss if they do get selected for that World Junior tournament.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And it's probably
the 2 games at the beginning of February are against Augustana, so they won't matter for the conference at all.
For the conference points. So, and I'm not exactly positive when that tournament starts and what 6 games it might be that they would miss. But either way, yeah, I mean, anything you can pick up from this weekend, you want to win this series. You want to get 4 to 6 points from it and take those points back from Lake Superior State, just because of what happened earlier in the season with the Lakers. But yeah, I don't know.
According to, I just looked it up here. All I Googled was 2024 World Junior Ice Hockey dates. I have Tuesday, December 26th through Friday, January 5th. I feel like that can't be right.
That might be like pool play or round robin play or something like that. That doesn't seem like it's nearly long enough. Because the 26th would mean St. Cloud State and Ferris State for sure. And then, I don't know, I would be maybe assuming that it would stretch all the way to that Michigan Tech series if those teams were to move on, maybe. But yeah, I guess we can look into that more if those 2 actually do get named to the rosters for those teams, which hopefully they do, because that's awesome. I mean, you want that success for your school and for your athletes. That's big experience that they get, if they are able to come back then and be healthy for the month of February going into March.
Yeah, exactly. So what I have on here is that Thursday, December 21st is when some pre-tournament games happen. The preliminary round starts.
We may have just lost CJ. I am not positive if I'm still recording or not. Here we go. CJ,
from what I'm seeing on the World Junior Championships in Sweden, because they're in Sweden, right? I think that's what
I believe so.
Yeah, so that's, maybe I'm wrong on something. Maybe, so there's some more dedicated hockey people than me that are listening and are just like screaming at their phone right now. But that's what I've seen using the old Google machine. So that's what I got.
I hate that. I bet that happens to us all the time, because I do that to my podcast that I listen to. I'm like, what are you guys talking about, man? This is easy stuff. But yeah, we're kind of novice at some of this stuff outside.
I simply would just say the correct takes all the time.
Yeah, I mean, duh. Listen back to this. It's so funny. I actually just listened to a random episode of a podcast today, and this dude
of our podcast
no, a different one. And this dude was talking about how there is no shot the Spurs win the lottery and get Wembanyama, and this was like last October. And I was like, oh, that's crazy.
That's
so I
don't go back to our old podcast. Don't fact check us.
Nope.
Nope.
We're gonna delete them 2 weeks after they've posted, so that there's just
exactly. And actually, we're gonna send the guys from Men in Black to just
every take that I make, it's never wrong. It's just too early.
It's taken out of context.
Yeah, eventually it's out of context. If I say that Bemidji State's going to sweep the University of North Dakota. I'm not wrong. It's just early. I was talking about 2037 when that finally happens, you know?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
You thought I was talking about this season? No.
Obviously, the jutting injury messed up the take, obviously.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
therefore you can't hold me.
Should we do that? Should we be that podcast that just makes excuses for every single loss? Yeah, I mean, if we had jutting, we win against North Dakota. So I'm not even going to break that down because there's no point. If we would have had Jackson jutting, it would have, wouldn't have mattered.
What's the point? I mean, really, if that the officiating in that game, and I just, I think that we got to have a broader conversation.
It's officiating every time. Every time. That's all this podcast is the official podcast. Like, if the officials were a little bit better, we would have won. Or the officials did really well in this game, and that's why we won.
That's why we won. Yeah, they had great form on a travel call. They just were, like the perfect. They moved their arms so perfectly.
We're getting a little unhinged here, but
a little bit, but that's we've reached the end of the podcast anyway. So this is kind of our time to just allow it to get there, listener. Just allow it to get there. So Ian, anything else in Bemidji State? Anything kind of come across the timeline that you want to get out there? I know that it's kind of end of season award time for places like soccer and football, kind of getting their respective things. I know that some football stuff has come across.
There was 4 Beavers recognized as all region by the United Soccer coaches for the tournament. That was just the news broke today at 10:46 a.m. So that would be Hallie Peterson, Maria Stocky, Maggie Cade, and Katrina Barthelt, all named all Central Region by United Soccer coaches. So congrats to those 4. As far as I know, that's the only big news that we kind of have right now outside of the World Junior rosters.
Yeah. So we're getting there with technical difficulties here. It kind of glitched out for a second. So maybe this is the time, Ian, that we probably say it's probably time to log off, huh?
Yeah, it just might be.
It just might be that time before we start having our McDonald's sandwich debate on this on the podcast, which we probably. All right. Well, this has been. Recap and a WCHA weekend for the women's hockey team. A whole lot of stuff going on. We'll break down for you next week